I'm here now with Editorial Board member Mary Kissel, our expert on housing, which it looks like will be with us forever.
Yeah, there's an awful lot to write about housing.
Well, at the moment, the administration is apparently trying to pull together more or less the umpteenth bailout for mortgage holders. How is this one supposed to work?
Well, this just goes to show you, Dan, that when you leave taxpayer money lying around Washington, the politicians will figure out a way to spend it. Right. What's at issue here is about $21 billion of quote-unquote leftover TARP money that has not been allocated, and Treasury wants to take that money to incentivize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those toxic mortgage twins, to do what's called principal write-downs, basically to write down the mortgages, in this case, of homeowners who are not paying their monthly payments. And so taxpayers would take the risk that money would indeed go towards keeping those people in their homes. But the interesting twist, of course, in this case is that the conservator and regulator who sits on top of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac has been saying loudly and publicly now for months that there are better ways and less riskier ways to use taxpayer money to keep people in their homes if that's what politicians want to do.
Well, you're talking here about Ed DeMarco. He's the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. That is the regulator for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. I think most Americans know that Freddie and Fannie were a catastrophe, and he's the one who's obliged to look out for their soundness. And he has more goals than certainly he is supposed to try to get people to unwind these mortgages over time, but he has a couple of other things that he is supposed to be responsible for as well, such as protecting the taxpayer whose money is in play here.
Yeah, he has basically three legal mandates that he has to fulfill. He has to preserve and conserve Fannie and Freddie's assets. He has to keep them operating. In other words, because they dominate the mortgage market, if he didn't keep them operating, we would have a catastrophe if they weren't unwound, and basically to keep them going until Congress figures out what to do with them. And then thirdly, to maximize assistance to homeowners to minimize foreclosures. And it's really that third piece that the Obama administration wants him to prioritize. And he's saying, no, hang on, wait a second. I can't do that at the expense of the other two priorities. And by the way, we've been doing an awful lot, modifying millions of mortgages to fulfill that duty. We just do it when we think it's economically feasible to do so.
Right. Mary, explain for us as clearly as you can exactly what DeMarco is attempting to do when he says he's trying to protect taxpayers. In what sense are taxpayers' money at risk in what the administration is trying to do?
Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac insure mortgages. They back mortgages. So if a homeowner defaults on a mortgage, ultimately the taxpayer's money is at risk. So the point that Ed DeMarco has been making is that something called principal forbearance, telling a homeowner, you know what, you're having trouble, we're going to put off your principal payments, but ultimately you're still responsible for that whole mortgage debt.
Right. Forbearance is not forgiveness.
Is not forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness is what Treasury wants to do. Treasury wants to say, you know what, you have a $400,000 loan, let's just wipe $100,000 off of that and let's use taxpayer money to do that. Well, when you do that, there are a couple things that happen here. First of all, it incentivizes people not to pay, because if I'm underwater on my mortgage and I see that the guy, and I'm paying, and I see the guy next door is delinquent and the government's giving him a bailout, well then you're putting very perverse incentives into the marketplace. Secondly, the upside here is all for the homeowner, not for the taxpayer, because they're the ones getting the free gift here.
Isn't there a political implication here as well? You know, Paul and I were just talking about what the jobs market might do to President Obama's prospects. Housing has been hanging over his presidency for 3 years. He wants to get this off the table.
Yeah, well, the irony is, of course, Dan, housing is hanging over his presidency because he's been doing everything humanly possible to interfere in the natural market clearing mechanisms that would have taken place if he had simply stood back, let banks foreclose, let the prices drop and market find a bottom and let the market recover. But he hasn't. We've had umpteen programs, HARP, HAMP, FHA refinance, I mean, the second mortgage lien program. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. And this is yet another attempt to interfere in the market, and it will only delay the recovery.
All right, Mary, we look forward to you coming back again to talk to us about a problem which I suspect is not going away. Thanks a lot.